We've got something going on Saturday in Champaign, Illinois. We're playing a football game, of course, but there's something more going on. They are celebrating a very, very important milestone in Illinois football history that happened 100 years ago this Friday. And I do not believe this is an accident. I believe they worked with the Big Ten to schedule this game as close as they could to this day. This day is probably the most important day in Illinois football history, probably athletics history. And that was Friday, October 18th. They're going to wear these special throwback uniforms. I think someone finally got the helmets right on the throwbacks, by the way. They're making them look like a leather helmet. And it all goes back to what happened on this day in 1924. And on this day in 1924, they held the dedication of their stadium. Well, that's nice. We do all kinds of things for facilities, right? They actually started construction on the stadium in the early 20s. This is right after World War I, okay? They actually played a game in it in 1923, but didn't officially dedicate it until they could line up a huge opponent and have a huge spectacle and have the stadium ready. And of course, like a lot of people back then, like Ohio State that you know about, they picked Michigan in 1924, a century ago. And there's a look at their dedication, and they labeled their dedication of War Memorial Stadium. Like many stadiums, it was in honor of people who lost their lives in World War I. The story of this day is one of the most famous football games in college football history, and football history really, because of this man, who we talked about a little bit in the first half, and I'm talking about Red Grange. All right, there he is. This is a photo from the game with no one really near him. In fact, it says there, Grange all alone at the game, and there was a lot of that. He took the opening kickoff back 95 yards for a touchdown. Minutes later, 67-yard TD run. Immediately after that, got the ball back, 56-yard TD run, 44-yard TD run. This is in the first 12 minutes of the football game. The coach sat him, or he took himself out, I don't know. Illinois was leading 27-0. The game was effectively over. He went back in the second half, scored another rushing TD, and then, why not, threw for one. This is like the Lions game at Dallas. Okay, burn. So this man was this guy before this game, and then he was suddenly this guy. People waxing poetic about him in this huge game. And they haven't really stopped talking about it since, okay? He went on to incredible fame. Grantland Rice gave him his nickname, basically the Galloping Ghost. He's on the cover of Time magazine, a big deal back then, the following year. And you guys know that he left for the NFL early to the disgust of people like Yost, his own coach, and other people, to take football as a career. And probably because of the popularity of people who went to go see him, probably as important as anybody in the early foundation of the NFL to make it a legitimate option for people. Incredibly famous, and it all goes back to that day, and you will hear a lot about it on Saturday. There's more to the story, though. I mentioned it's a memorial stadium. Back in 1903, Michigan had a multi-sport star, not Neil Snow. Neil Snow was already gone. This is another one. His name was Curtis Redden. There he is on the baseball team. And here's a photo of him on the 1903 Michigan football team. Yes, the team that played for the Little Brown Jug or created the Little Brown Jug rivalry. He was captain of the 1903 national championship team for Yost. He also played in 1901 and 1902. In 1919, he died in World War I in the waning days of the war from pneumonia. If you study war, if you study history, it's very often that most of the people, especially in those early wars, especially in the Civil War, particularly in World War I, died from disease and other causes rather than injury in battle. He died of pneumonia in Germany in 1919. He had a huge military-style funeral with his brigade, his 149th Brigade. His horse sergeant led the brigade behind his casket, and in military custom, his boots were placed backwards in the stirrups of his horse sergeant as they proceeded. This guy made a huge impact in his time in World War I and passed away. Why are we talking about him? He's one of the people who died in World War I. What the stadium did was they honored Illinois graduates or Illinois students who fought and died in the war. And one of the features of this stadium are all the beautiful columns. They have 200 columns around the stadium. And you had the opportunity to raise money. If your group, a lot of fraternities, like things like that, raise money to honor one of their fellow students on one of those columns. They made two exceptions, one for a Chicago student and one for this man, Curtis Redden. He has a column dedicated to him, and in particular it says Michigan 03, because that's his football season, that's when he was captain. And Fielding H. Yost himself was one of the guys, along with his brigade, who happened to be a lot of members from Illinois. And Redden grew up in Illinois with a lot of these guys. They raised the money for the column. So if you go to the game today, you can go find one of the columns is dedicated to Michigan's 1903 football captain, Curtis Redden. And it's a nice honor. And it's a cool tie between our two universities, and that's what it was meant to be in the spirit of it. Back to Grange. He wasn't done yet. You probably remember that he went to the NFL after the 1925 season, but before he graduated. That first game was in 1924. He had another season. And Michigan happened to be on the schedule returning to Champaign to play them again. Michigan, humiliated in 1924, could not stop this man, had a part in creating a superstar. Yost wasn't the coach in 1924. He took a year off. He helped with the football team. He was involved. He was athletic director. You guys know he had a lot of stuff going on. He returned, and part of the reason for his return was to figure out what to do about Red Grange, knowing they would play again. So he spent the better part of the year trying to come up with a defense and a way to stop Grange. How are we going to do this? He came up with a formation, yes, a 7-man front with a diamond secondary, keying on Grange. And they practiced, generally speaking, outside, but to unveil the formation, they went inside the Yost Fieldhouse in private, without the peering eyes of the public or media, and practiced the formation with scout teams, etc., to dial it in. They returned. On Friday, they practiced in Champaign, Illinois, and Yost had his lineup. Early in the game, they found out that Grange could not move the ball against this defense. The coach from Illinois, Zubke, moved him to quarterback. He was a good passer, but basically snapped the ball directly and tried a bunch of different formations and couldn't do it. All told, he ran the ball 25 times and gained just 65 yards versus the 400 plus he gained total offense in that game in 1924. I love this. The Daily puts out an extra. What should we say? We crushed them 3-0. Yes, if you go through papers after that, some people said, okay, Daily, we crushed them, really? The point was We redeemed ourselves here, people. They didn't score a single point. Your great superstar, Yost, got him. All right, and there he is. Yost busted the Galloping Ghost. You won't hear that story this weekend. You'll hear about 1924. You won't hear what happened next. So now you know the rest of the story.